As seen within the Darth Plagueis novel, in the aftermath of the events of the Phantom Menace, Obi-Wan and Anakin visited Palpatine within his temporary office in the Senate building on Coruscant, who had just become the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. By this time, Anakin had of course not just been discovered on Tatooine by Qui-Gon and then subsequently brought to the attention of the Jedi Order, but Anakin, although reluctantly at first, had also been accepted for training as a Jedi by Obi-Wan. During this brief meeting, it was here where Palpatine made the important determination that he would ultimately execute the final stage of the Sith Grand Plan to destroy the Jedi Order and Republic, with Anakin as a Sith Apprentice. As Palpatine concluded, although Dooku had talent, he would ultimately be a placeholder until Anakin was ready to be trained as a Sith. Importantly, as the Darth Plagueis novel reveals, Palpatine's plan accepted the fact, and Palpatine even saw it as helpful and beneficial, that Anakin be instructed by Obi-Wan in the ways of the Force and be trained as a Jedi. Eventually, Palpatine believed that despite Anakin's training as a Jedi and as being guided by the light side of the Force, he would ultimately be brought over to the dark side of the Force as Palpatine's Sith Apprentice and carry out the grand plan of the Sith. However, although Palpatine saw it as acceptable and likely beneficial to him that Anakin be first trained as a Jedi dedicated to the light side before being trained as a Sith, there was one Dark Lord of the Sith who would have seen this as completely unacceptable. This Sith Lord being Darth Bane, who started the Sith Grand Plan that was being carried out by Palpatine through Bane's Rule of Two, roughly a millennium earlier. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate why Darth Bane would have taken a very different approach from Darth Sidious when it came to training Anakin Skywalker as a Sith Apprentice based upon the requirements of the Rule of Two, explaining why Bane would have never trained Anakin as a Sith if he was in the same position as Sidious. As we'll see, although Sidious saw Anakin's initial instruction by Obi-Wan and training as a Jedi and with the light side as a positive that would eventually help to bring Anakin's allegiances onto the side of the Sith and dark side, Bane would have saw this as a disaster, a decision that ultimately threatened the Sith Order and the grand plan that he started. I'll note at the beginning here that this video will discuss sources that are found in both the current canon and in Legends, but I'll be sure to note when I'm referring to material that is canon and material that is Legends. As the creator of the Rule of Two as a way to destroy the Jedi and Republic, allowing for the Sith to gain control of the galaxy, Darth Bane expressed his thoughts in a written work entitled The Rule of Two. These writings are found within the Book of Sith, which is a Legends reference book. As Sidious himself notes within this book, these writings by Darth Bane were, quote, a keystone of the Sith Order for centuries, and as this legend source makes clear, Sidious was in possession of these writings himself. Within Darth Bane's The Rule of Two, he wrote a section entitled Selecting an Apprentice, something that isn't surprising given the fact that since the Rule of Two allowed for only 2 Sith at any given time, 1 Sith Master and 1 Sith Apprentice, a Sith Lord's decision regarding who they chose to be their apprentice was a crucial one, not just for the Sith Lord, but for the Sith Order itself. In this section, Bane was clear. Within the Rule of Two era, Sith Lords were required to outthink their enemies and plan for any eventuality. In this regard, a Sith Lord had to choose a proper apprentice, as this would ensure the continued existence of the Sith Order no matter what happened in the future. Having made it clear that the choice in a Sith Lord's apprentice was a crucial component of the Sith Order, Bane then left no doubt as to how a Sith should approach potential apprentices who had already been trained by the Jedi. When guiding future Sith Lords in the process of selecting an apprentice, Bane directly states in the Book of Sith, quote, seek out those who have not yet been discovered or subjected to Jedi corruption. Further in this regard, Bane was quick to point out that there were many Force-sensitive individuals within the galaxy. For Bane, the point is clear. He wanted Sith Lords who came after him to completely avoid training apprentices who had already been discovered by the Jedi, not only because it was unnecessary given how many other potential apprentices existed within the galaxy, but even more importantly, Bane saw an element of corruption being associated with being trained as a Jedi and in the light side of the Force. Therefore, for this reason, Darth Bane wanted Sith Lords to select apprentices who weren't discovered by the Jedi Order and weren't already trained by them. Clearly, this important point found within Darth Bane's writings was ignored by Darth Sidious when it came to his accepting Anakin Skywalker as his Sith Apprentice. While Sidious saw Anakin's prior training as a Jedi as something that would ultimately push him towards the dark side, Bane would have had a completely different interpretation of this path, instead seeing Anakin as someone who would have been corrupted by Jedi teachings, and therefore, someone who should be avoided when selecting a Sith Apprentice within the Rule of Two era. In this regard, we can ultimately see the wisdom found in the advice of Darth Bane. There was a component of Anakin Skywalker that persisted within Darth Vader, where Anakin ultimately re-emerged to find redemption back into the light side of the Force in Return of the Jedi, with Anakin ultimately destroying Sidious and the Sith Order itself as it was recreated a millennium earlier through the efforts of Darth Bane. However, this isn't the only example where Darth Bane's advice was shown to be correct in relation to the idea that individuals who were previously trained as Jedi should not be trained as Sith apprentices, due to the fact that their training as a Jedi could not simply be made irrelevant merely through their new allegiances to the Sith and their alliance with the dark side. There are a number of sources found within the current canon that demonstrate that Darth Bane was correct as it relates specifically to Anakin Skywalker, and how his previous training as a Jedi was an element that was important to him, and which was a persistent component for Darth Vader. For example, within the canon novel Tarkin, which took place roughly 5 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith, while reflecting on Darth Plagueis' understanding that the Force can strike back, Darth Sidious recognized that even within his apprentice Darth Vader, he could see evidence of, quote, the barest flicker of persistent light. Even more importantly, within the canon novel Thrawn Alliances, which took place only 2 years before the events of A New Hope, even at this point, almost 2 decades after Vader began his path with the dark side of the Force, Sidious understood that Vader's, quote, previous life among the Jedi could not simply be ignored, nor casually dismissed. For this reason, Sidious required Vader to undertake a mission that forced Vader to face his past. Finally, within the Rise of Skywalker novelization, which is part of the current canon, it's revealed that prior to the events of Return of the Jedi, having understood that there still remained a flickering light within Vader, just as was revealed within the Tarkin novel, Sidious had been prepared for Vader's betrayal for years. It was this understanding that allowed Sidious to act quickly enough to maintain his consciousness after the events upon the second Death Star during the Battle of Endor. In this way, it's clear through the knowledge of Sidious that Darth Vader's previous training as a Jedi and his life as Anakin Skywalker remained a crucial component for Darth Vader regardless of his training as a Sith. As even Sidious himself recognized, Vader's life as a Jedi and his training with the light side of the Force could never be ignored, and would ultimately be something that would result in the destruction of the Sith Order that had been started by Darth Bane. Bane's writings within the Book of Sith seem to understand this component very well, something that isn't surprising given Bane's knowledge regarding the life of Darth Revan, with Bane being fully aware of how even a great Sith Lord such as Revan, who was trained previously as a Jedi, could ultimately be brought back into the light side of the Force. Therefore, for Darth Bane, understanding the potential dangers that could result from a Sith Lord selecting an apprentice who had previously been discovered by the Jedi Order and then subsequently trained as a Jedi, Bane would have never trained Anakin Skywalker as his Sith apprentice. Instead, Bane would have sought an apprentice who had no connection to the Jedi Order or the light side of the Force, thereby ensuring that the Sith Order had the greatest chance of continuing and working towards its grand plan. So there we have it, why Darth Bane would have never trained Anakin Skywalker as his Sith apprentice. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me... For Darth Revan.